The rain came down in torrents, relentless and unyielding, drenching everything in its path. The streets of the small, worn-down neighborhood lay under a gray, ominous sky, and the flickering streetlights cast long, distorted shadows on the cracked sidewalks. The air smelled of wet concrete, mixed with the faint scent of distant rain-soaked trees. It was the kind of weather that made everything seem hopeless, as if the world itself had given up on the people who lived in it. Sophia Carson pedaled through the wet streets, her face obscured by the hood of her raincoat. The wind whipped at her, making her shiver as she fought to keep her bike steady. She'd been riding this route for what felt like forever, 3 years of deliveries for the small bakery that had been the only job she could find. There were no luxuries in her life. No savings, no phone, no new coat to shield her from the cold. Just the endless rhythm of bike rides, rain-soaked nights, and the constant nagging sense of survival. At 26, Sophia had learned not to ask for much. She had a small, cramped apartment in the heart of the town, just enough to call home. The walls were thin, the windows barely sealed against the elements, but it was a roof over her head. And when the cold rain fell, it became a constant reminder that things could always be worse. The bag of pastries in her basket seemed like a small weight in the big scheme of things, but it was a lifeline to her. Just another order to get done. Just another night. Another small victory to carry her through. She wiped the rain from her face, her wet hair clinging to her skin. It was supposed to be just another routine delivery, another monotonous trip from the bakery to the customer's door. The rain had made the roads treacherous, but Sophia had grown used to the dangers of the wet streets. She knew the shortcuts, the potholes, the hidden dangers, but she hadn't expected this. Up ahead, a large, dark shape lay in the middle of the street, barely visible through the downpour. At first, Sophia thought it was just another discarded object, a pile of trash or debris. But as she got closer, she realized that it was a dog, a large German shepherd, its body twisted at an unnatural angle. The animal lay still, its legs splayed out in an odd, painful way. Its fur was matted with rainwater and dirt, and its eyes were closed. Sophia's heart clenched as she slowed her bike, her hands tightening on the handlebars. She stopped just a few feet away from the dog. The animal didn't move. Sophia's breath caught in her throat. She knew she couldn't just pass by, not when the dog was in such a state. Her mind raced. Should she call animal control? But she had no phone, no way to get help. She couldn't leave it here to die in the street. She glanced around, but the neighborhood was empty. The storm had chased everyone inside, leaving the streets eerily quiet. "Hey there," she called softly, her voice barely audible over the sound of the rain. The dog didn't respond. She frowned and dismounted her bike, carefully approaching the injured animal. She knelt beside the dog, her heart racing as she gently touched its fur. The dog was warm, but it was so still, so limp. "Come on," she whispered. "Stay with me." She carefully checked the dog's injuries, noting the blood on its side and the way its hind leg hung awkwardly. It was broken, and there was no telling how long the dog had been in this state. The animal gave a faint whimper, its eyes fluttering open just for a moment before closing again. Sophia's heart broke. She couldn't just leave it. She glanced around again, but there was no one in sight. The street was completely deserted, the houses dark and silent behind their windows. She couldn't wait for help to arrive. There was no help coming. Sophia made up her mind. She would save this dog. The weight of the dog was heavier than she had expected, but Sophia didn't hesitate. She cradled the injured animal in her arms, careful not to jostle him too much as she hurried back to her bike. She didn't have much, but she wasn't going to leave him there. It wasn't a choice. Sophia knew what it felt like to be alone, to feel like no one cared. Maybe this dog had been abandoned, or maybe it had run away from someone who didn't know how to care for it. Either way, he needed her. And in some strange, inexplicable way, she needed him too. The rain had stopped, but the chill in the air cut through her clothes as she made her way back to her apartment. The streets, once bustling with life during the day, now lay desolate in the night. The storm had passed, but the aftermath still lingered: wet pavement, puddles, and that constant low hum of a world that didn't seem to care. When she finally reached her small apartment, Sophia was exhausted. Her legs burned from the effort of carrying the dog, but she refused to put him down. She'd found him, and now it was her responsibility to make sure he survived. She pushed open the door with her shoulder, stepping inside as she carefully laid the dog on the floor, setting him down gently on a blanket she had grabbed from her bed. She worked quickly, but with the care of someone who had been through too, much not to understand the gravity of what she was doing. Sophia knelt beside the dog, inspecting his wounds again. His leg was broken, and there was a gash along his side. She didn't have any medical supplies, no bandages, no antiseptic, but she knew she had to do something. She could feel her heart racing as she tried to think of what to do. She found an old towel and dipped it in warm water, gently dabbing at the blood. The dog whimpered weakly, and Sophia's eyes filled with tears. She had no way to call for help, no one to turn to. The thought of failing him filled her with panic, but she couldn't give up, not now. She whispered, stroking his fur. "I'm here." The dog's eyes fluttered open again, his gaze meeting hers for a brief moment before closing again. But there was something in those eyes, something that told her he wasn't gone. He was still fighting, and so was she. The next morning, Sophia was exhausted. She had hardly slept, staying up through the night to tend to the dog. She had used the little bit of bandages she could find, trying to make him as comfortable as possible, but she knew she couldn't do this on her own. He needed proper medical care, and she had no idea how to provide it. She couldn't afford to take him to a vet. The thought of the bills was enough to make her stomach twist in knots. But she couldn't just ignore his needs either. She couldn't let him suffer. After a quick breakfast, just a cup of coffee and a slice of stale bread, Sophia grabbed Rex, as she had started calling him, and wrapped him in a blanket. She carefully picked him up, holding him against her chest, and made her way to the small veterinary clinic she had heard about in the neighborhood. The clinic wasn't much to look at, small, cramped and tucked away at the edge of town. But it had a reputation for helping those in need. Sophia had no idea whether they would be able to help her, but it was her only option. When she arrived, the door chimed as she entered. A woman stood behind the counter, looking up in surprise as she saw the injured dog in Sophia's arms. "Can I help you?" the woman asked, her voice soft but concerned. "I found this dog," Sophia said, her voice shaking. "He's hurt. He needs medical help, but I don't have much money. I'll work for you. I'll do anything." The woman, who introduced herself as Dr. Emily, looked at Rex for a moment, assessing the situation. "Bring him in back," she said finally. "We'll see what we can do." Sophia's heart lifted slightly, and she followed Dr. Emily into the back of the clinic, carrying Rex carefully. The clinic was small but well organized. Shelves were lined with pet supplies, and a few other animals were in kennels. There was a sense of quiet efficiency to the place. As Dr. Emily prepared to examine Rex, Sophia sat in the corner, her mind racing. She had no idea what would happen next, but she had to believe that this was the right thing to do. "Thank you," she whispered to the dog as she watched the vet work. "We're going to get through this, I promise." The gentle hum of the clinic's air conditioning was the only sound in the small back room as Dr. Emily worked to examine Rex. Sophia sat anxiously in the corner, her fingers nervously twisting the hem of her rain-soaked coat. She tried to steady her breath, but the anxiety in her chest kept growing, each second feeling like a small eternity. She didn't know what would happen next. Would the vet help? Could Rex be saved? Dr. Emily worked quickly but carefully, her hands moving with practiced precision. She checked Rex's broken leg, gently lifting it to examine the injury. Her brow furrowed as she made soft notes on a clipboard. The deep gash on Rex's side needed attention too, but Sophia could see that Dr. Emily was focused, methodical, trying to assess the extent of the damage before making any promises. Sophia stayed quiet, watching, hoping. Finally, after what felt like forever, Dr. Emily looked up from her notes and met Sophia's eyes. "This is a serious injury," Dr. Emily said, her voice calm but direct. "His leg is badly broken and it's going to need surgery. The wound on his side is infected, but I can clean that up." We'll need to keep him here for a few days for monitoring." Sophia's heart sank. She felt a wave of helplessness wash over her. She had no idea how she would afford the treatment, and yet she couldn't bear the thought of leaving Rex here, broken and abandoned. She bit her lip, unsure of what to say. She had to ask. There was no other choice. "Please, is there any way I can work it off?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I'll do anything. I can clean, help with the animals, whatever you need. I can't afford the bills, but I can work. Please." Dr. Emily seemed to consider this for a moment, her eyes softening as she studied Sophia. Then, with a sigh, she nodded. "All right," she said. "You can help out around here. It won't cover the full cost, but it'll help. We'll start with Rex's treatment, and I'll let you know what we'll need you to do in exchange, but I'll be upfront, this isn't going to be cheap. His leg will take time to heal, and there will be follow-up care." Sophia nodded quickly, tears welling in her eyes. This wasn't the answer she had hoped for, but it was a start. She had a chance to help Rex, and that was all that mattered. "Thank you," Sophia whispered, her voice breaking. "Thank you so much." Dr. Emily offered her a small smile, one that spoke volumes. "Just take care of him. I'll take care of the rest." The next few weeks blurred together for Sophia. Each day she worked tirelessly at the clinic, scrubbing floors, cleaning cages, feeding the animals, and doing anything else she could to repay the cost of Rex's treatment. The work was exhausting, and her body ached with each passing hour, but she didn't complain. She couldn't. Not when Rex was depending on her. She spent her breaks sitting by his side, stroking his fur as he slowly regained strength. His leg was still in a cast, but the pain seemed to be lessening. The deep wound on his side had healed, the infection gone. Slowly but surely, Rex was starting to recover. At night, when the clinic was quiet, Sophia would stay by his side. She would talk to him, telling him about her day or sharing stories about her life, about how she ended up working at the bakery and riding her bike through the rain every night. She never expected him to respond, but it was a comfort to her to have someone, no matter how broken, listen to her. One evening, as she sat by his side, she gently rubbed his ears. Rex lifted his head slightly, meeting her eyes for a brief moment before letting out a soft sigh. It was a small gesture, but to Sophia, it meant everything. "You're getting stronger, huh?" she said softly, her voice filled with emotion. "I knew you could do it." Rex gave a soft, almost imperceptible wag of his tail, and Sophia smiled, her heart swelling with pride. He had come so far since that stormy night, and so had she. The clinic had become a second home to her. It wasn't just the work, it was the sense of purpose she had found here, the feeling of helping others, of doing something that mattered. And then there was Rex. He had become her constant, her companion, and in many ways, he was her anchor. Sophia began to feel a shift inside of her. The pain and exhaustion that had defined her life before seemed a little more bearable now. She still didn't have much, no savings, no big plans for the future, but there was something deeper now. A sense of connection, both to Rex and to the work she was doing. For the first time in a long time, Sophia felt like she was doing something that mattered, not just for herself, but for someone else. It had been a long shift at the bakery, and Sophia was exhausted. She had worked through the morning, running deliveries back and forth, trying to keep up with the orders as the bakery's busy season began. By the time she was finished, the sun was setting and the streets were emptying out. It was getting late and she was ready to go home. She climbed onto her bike, the rain starting to fall again in the distance. She didn't mind the rain anymore. It had become a part of her routine, but tonight felt different. The air was thick, heavy with something she couldn't quite place. A nagging sense of unease gripped her chest as she made her way through the quiet streets. As she approached a dark alley, two men stepped out from the shadows. They were tall and broad-shouldered, their faces obscured by hoods. The streetlights barely illuminated their forms as they blocked her path. "Hey, girl," one of them called, his voice gruff. "Got anything for us?" Sophia's heart pounded in her chest as she tried to back away, but they stepped closer, moving with purpose. "I don't have anything," she said, her voice shaking. "Please, I just need to get home." The men exchanged a look, then advanced on her. one of them grabbing her bike basket, trying to yank it away. Sophia struggled, but her hands were wet from the rain, and her arms felt weak from the long day. She didn't know what to do. The men were stronger and she was alone, but then before she could react, she heard a growl, low, rumbling and fierce. Rex. Sophia froze, her heart skipping a beat as the dog appeared from the shadows, his body tense, his eyes locked on the two men. His fur was wet from the rain, his coat glistening under the streetlight. His tail was stiff, his growl deepening as he stepped forward, placing himself between Sophia and the attackers. "Get out of here," one of the men sneered, but Rex didn't move. He stepped closer, his body bristling with protection. Sophia felt a rush of emotion, fear, relief, and an overwhelming sense of gratitude. This was the dog she had saved. This was the dog who had become her protector. The men hesitated, unsure of what to do. They had clearly underestimated Rex's strength and resolve. For a moment, everything seemed to stand still, the sound of the rain, the crackling tension between them all. Then, with a quick motion, the two men turned and bolted, disappearing into the darkness of the alley. Sophia stood frozen for a moment, her hands trembling as she looked down at Rex. He had saved her. He had protected her. Tears filled her eyes, not from fear, but from overwhelming gratitude. She knelt beside him, her voice trembling as she whispered, "You saved me, Rex." Rex lowered his head to her, nuzzling her gently as if to say, "I will always be here." The news of Rex's bravery spread like wildfire through the neighborhood. The people who had once barely noticed Sophia now stopped her in the streets, offering thanks, support, and donations to help cover the cost of Rex's recovery. He was becoming a local hero, a symbol of loyalty and courage in a world that so often felt bleak. Sophia's life slowly began to change. The bakery offered her more hours, and she was able to save a little money. The clinic offered her a steady job, and her bond with Rex continued to grow stronger. People came to her for advice about animals in need, and she started taking on more responsibility at the clinic, working with other animals in need. But the biggest surprise came one afternoon when a retired Marine named Jack approached her. He had heard about her story and had been moved by her bond with Rex. He had a small house on the outskirts of town, and he wanted to offer it to her. "I've got a place for you," Jack said, his voice kind. "It's yours if you want it. A fresh start, for you and the dog." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. She had never imagined such an offer, and yet here it was, a chance at a new life, a chance for stability. "I don't know what to say," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Jack smiled. "You don't need to say anything, just take it." Sophia knew in that moment that her life was about to change. With Rex by her side, she had everything she needed. Sophia and Rex started a new chapter together in the small house that Jack had gifted her. They had both been through so much, but now they had a chance to build something new. Sophia continued her work at the clinic, using the knowledge she had gained to help other animals in need. She also started fostering stray animals, giving them the same second chance that Rex had been given. And as she worked, she never forgot the dog who had saved her life. Rex became more than just a pet. He was a symbol of loyalty, courage, and second chances. Together, Sophia and Rex proved that no matter how broken someone may seem, there is always hope for a new beginning.